Alright, what is up YouTube? It is K-Rod here. I'm back with another good video for y'all today. Uh, let's talk about Mr. Terrence Bud Crawford. Alright, so let's talk about it. For those of you that don't know, Terrence Crawford, made a video talking about begging to the IBF to make him a mandatory to Errol Spence. Which is really weird and very stupid, because, well, let me just, elaborate a little bit easier. For those of you that don't know, Errol Spence, he is in a bit of a situation with the IBF, and the IBF is wanting Errol Spence to honor his mandatory position against well, it was supposed to be Kuchatil Abudakrov, but he just lost to Cody Crowley. But now the IBF had just moved Jaron Ennis to number one to become the mandatory for the IBF belt. Correct me if I'm wrong, for anybody that wants to comment down below. But if that is to be true, Jaron Ennis will be Errol Spence's mandatory if everything plays into the right hands of where things are set to be. But here's the problem that I have with this. I don't want to see Errol Spence fight Jaron Ennis now. I'd like to see him fight Jaron Ennis later, somewhere down the road. And which obviously, it's probably going to have to be now, but I would rather see Jaron Ennis fight EJ when he has a belt, and I think it's better for him to just go the WBO route and face the winner of Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford. Or if he wants to take some step aside money, I would take step aside money and wait for the winner of Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence, because that's obviously what Errol Spence wants. I don't think Errol Spence should really be chasing for undisputed anymore at 147. I mean, if he wants undisputed, he could obviously get the winner of Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano. I'm pretty sure the WBC or the IBF can easily do that for him if he wants to move up and weight and be mandated against the winner of that fight, which is set to be made in February. But still, Errol Spence, doesn't deserve that type of treatment. Obviously, from what we heard from the WBA is not willing to mandate Ugas and Spence, but I think that decision could yet be, determined. But it kind of looks like the WBA doesn't give two craps about, EJ and Ugas and Terrence Crawford, because, these are obviously, the missing puzzles out of the entire equation. And I think it's not fair that Errol Spence has to be basically screwed over by the IBF, and now possibly with the WBC, if I'm not mistaken, where I heard the other day on some boxing scene article that Virgil Ortiz could possibly be the mandatory to Errol Spence. Because if that's to be true, Errol Spence, he's basically in a triple threat situation. He can either try to go the route of facing Terrence Crawford, try to get that fight made, or if that fight can't get made, which I don't think the fight's gonna get made, but I heard EJ and Bud, they're in light negotiations, or they're in early negotiations. So whatever happens out of that negotiating sequence, hopefully if that fight is made, then by all means make the fight, because I think Terrence Crawford, he's going to make a lot more money off the back end facing EJ, knowing that he'll be his own promoter heading into that fight. But it's like, you don't need anybody but yourself and the network that's willing to give you the money, and they could easily work with Crawford. But I think Crawford, he just needs, obviously an advisor that could definitely just do all the financial work for him. And then Crawford, he'll be able to do the things that he wants to do at, the tail end of his career. So I think it's best for Crawford to do that. But until then, like we obviously want to see Crawford in there, with the best. And I don't want to see Crawford be facing no Jose Zepeda or Josh Taylor. Obviously, that's something where he had to go, or he would have to go to Top Rank back for, and I don't want to see that shit. I would rather see maybe a fight between him and Jermell Charlo if he is successful of winning undisputed, or Brian Castano. Those are good stylistic matchups. Or if he's able to just man up and just make the fight with EJ, that's also a good move on his behalf as well. But let me just respond on him trying to make this weird statement to say that he tried begging to the IBF to make him a mandatory to EJ. Because last time I checked, when you're a champion in another different sanction body, there's like very few sanctioning, or there's only like, I want to say one or two sanction bodies out of the four that can give you the opportunity to be mandated as a mandatory while you're, a champion. Basically, having them force you as a champion to another champion, which I truly believe that should be a universal idea. But if boxing was just set up like a league where you didn't have sanction bodies and everything was just all, one face, one name, one champion, or if you want to have multiple belts, it's just all under one, branded name. And then, the belts themselves are just like tournament belts, pretty much. They're basically belts where, once you get them, you have to automatically unify them. And, that's how it should be. Belts are basically just there for you to make more money. And, obviously that's never to be true, because you could still make more money outside of winning a title. But still, when you win the bigger and tougher fights in boxing, you should get paid more money. But at the end of the day, there needs to be a marketized incentive. When you become a champion, you have to be forced to unify your belt. You can't just choose who the hell you want. You should be forced to unify with other champions, if there's going to be a thing called multiple champions in boxing. But I truly believe that is something that EJ wants out of the sport, because if we compare, and contrast to other sports like the UFC, they have it set up pretty good, where the best are automatically fighting each other, and you can't duck and dodge nobody. And if you do that, you're going to lose your spot in the rankings, and tough luck. You have to work your ass all the way back up to be number one. So if boxing had that structure, in a fight league type model, that would be awesome. But obviously, we got to work with what we got with the political corruption that's here in boxing. So I say until then, these sanction bodies are extremely corrupt and evil. But for what the IBF is trying to do with EJ and Bud, that's obviously just totally out of bounds. But now that I think about it, I think Bud might have a point. And it only makes a point to say that Terrence Crawford, he's willing to fight Errol Spence. But the problem is that EJ, he's being ratted out against, or he's being ratted out by the IBF, where the IBF doesn't want EJ to unify with Crawford, and they're trying to, get their sanctioning body money out of him, or sanctioning fees out of him, by having him fight a guy like Jerron Boots Ennis, to which, that's what's probably going to happen. I think Errol Spence, he's probably just going to vacate his belt, and he's just gonna say, "Fuck it, I'm moving up to 154 then," and easy pick'ems for Jerron Boots Ennis and Virgil Ortiz, because that's really what's gonna happen. I think the minute when EJ and Crawford vacate, it's just gonna be that type of timeline situation where Crawford and EJ, the minute they're gone, and I probably say same thing with Ugas, because Ugas, he's not going to be there for too long. I think, knowing how the WBA is, trying to screw him over, I think, either Stanionis or Butiev might be possibly able to defeat Ugas. But if Ugas comes out alive out of that, mini tournament, then that's definitely going to, try to speak some volume. In which I don't see the WBA, really having that, title situation there for quite much longer. But as far as Terrence Crawford's situation of where he wants to be with being a mandatory to Errol Spence, I like the idea, but I think at the same token, it's like, if you and EJ want to fight and it is a unification, then there should be some type of legal obligation to uphold a unification title fight over mandatories, in which unification belts always trump mandatories. So it's like, I think the fight can happen between EJ and Crawford. The main question is, is the fight really going to happen if the sanction bodies allow it? And I think, if the WBO and WBC and IBF, if they're able to get behind that fight, which I'm pretty sure they can, that will be a damn good fight. And think about it, EJ and Crawford, they could have their first little fight. And if they want to have like a rematch clause, by all means, go for it. And then after that, the winner of those two, or between those two, has to be let the mandatory challenger to let the winner of those, or the winner between those fights. So if EJ wins 2 out of 2 fights, because I would assume it would be either a trilogy or a duo type of fight deal, that would be pretty good. EJ, he'll have more leverage, but at the same token, he'll rest up, have his little mandatory title defense, which it'll probably be Jerron Boots Ennis or Virgil Ortiz, whoever is first in line. And then after that, just go after the final belt, which will be obviously Butiev, Stanionis, or Ugas, whoever wins out of that tournament. But still, that would be amazing. But I don't think EJ is willing to stay at 147 that much longer. He's been stating on multiple occasions that he can't make 147 easier anymore. So I think it's due to his age. His age is getting up there. So I can't blame Errol Spence. Errol Spence, he is not in a good situation of where he's at right now. And I think if he's able to stay at 147 a little bit longer until he makes his move to 154, by all means, go for it. But I think EJ should try to make the fight with Terrence Crawford, and if the sanction bodies won't allow it, then I would just vacate, because no matter what the public's gonna say, they're still gonna shit on EJ regardless of what he tries to do. And before anybody tries to come here and say, oh, well, if EJ vacates, if he can't get the Bud fight, then that means he's ducking Bud or he's ducking Jerron Boots Ennis, and that's not fucking true. Like, Errol Spence does not need anybody but himself in the sport of boxing. And he can easily just hang him up and say, fuck it, I'm done with boxing, and I'm just going to continue my life outside of boxing. And I think that's a great, business move, and that's a great financial mindset to have, because Errol Spence, he's extremely successful, and he has so much to offer after boxing is over. And I mean, he has his own promotional business, so he could easily run the show, himself by being his own promoter, and he could have so much more fun managing his own fighters and shit, and he'll be able to go to boxing fights free of charge and whatever, like, who knows. But EJ, he has a much better life when boxing is over. I think Errol Spence knows that, and he doesn't need boxing. Boxing basically needs him. And, the reason why I say that is because Errol Spence, he is a very highly talented, marketable threat to a lot of people. And I think where he's at in his career, it's just weird of how he's being, horribly mistreated by the boxing establishment. Because, like I said, if sanction bodies were never a thing in boxing, we would have already seen undisputed champions in the first place with just one belt, one face, one name, and, one division, or one, championship level division. And I think that's how boxing should be. It needs to be a universalized type of sport where you have to work your way up to be the top number one guy. And, when you become a champion and you want to unify, or you want to move up and face another champion, you should automatically become that mandatory. You shouldn't have to be waiting and taking step aside money to fight this guy, or not want to fight that guy. No, like, everything should be mandatory and set up in a manner where you have to be forced to fight the best if you want to be at the top of the level. So, I mean, that's just my economic beliefs on that. But then again, I would hope that gets fixed sometime in the future. And I'm pretty sure it will. I'm pretty sure, when boxing becomes more decentralized and there's more marketized, innovation in the sport, that's what's going to make the sport of boxing a lot better. Similar to, what we see out of the major sports, today. But then again, that's pretty much my thoughts. I thought Terrence Crawford had a little bit of clarity into saying that. I obviously didn't, believe in all of it. I thought, Terrence Crawford was kind of making up bullshit, and he obviously just, doesn't want to fight EJ, and he's trying to make up, excuses. But I can see why EJ is in the situation that he's in now. But I would hope that sometime later on in the future, EJ can be able to fight Crawford. But if he can't get the Crawford fight, like, literally next, then I say vacate and just move up to 154, because I understand why EJ, he does not want to risk his health and risk his body to face, some killers at 147, like Jaron Ennis or Virgil Ortiz. And it's not like to say that, he can't beat them. He can very well beat those guys and make himself notable at 147 more, to say that, he is, the Demon King at that division. But I think it's pretty much fair to say that Errol Spence should not be forced to fight these guys, because knowing that he is, the unified champion, and he's wanting to unify, it should just be basically him and Crawford left to fight, and then that'll basically determine who's at the best at welterweight. Obviously, undisputed won't happen, but it's better to just at least have, like, a unified battle between them, and then, whoever wins that, they move on and let the young guys take over, and then that's what will make the division at least somewhat great. But I don't know, man. I just hope that 147 can get cleared up sooner than later, because it's pretty pathetic that everybody wants undisputed, but not 147. It's like everybody talks about undisputed, but when we true hardcore boxing fans, especially from the LDBC, when we push and urge for these type of fights, for undisputed to happen, that's when all the racist decaps or the casuals that don't give a crap about boxing, that's when they start making up all these excuses to say, oh, well, that can't happen because blah, blah, blah this, blah, blah, blah that. And it's like, dude, shut the fuck up, man. If you don't care about the sport, then get out of boxing. You know, boxing does way better with no racist political protectionism. But, you know, when we talk about any other sport in the world, you always see one undisputed champion out of that sport, because there is a set a business model to have those teams or whoever's competing in whatever sport to be that number one guy to win it all. You know, we know the Michael Jordans of the world. We know the Serena Williams of the world. We know the, you know, Tiger Woods of the world. You know, like, we know who those guys are. So it's no question to say that they're not how should I say, notable, because they are notable, because their names live on, you know, to this day. But the problem is just that people gotta understand those sports to understand, you know, the clarity of who's, you know, the best in those sports. And I think it pretty much shows in the sport of boxing. Boxing is the only sport in the world where, you know, the sanction bodies prevent, you know, the best fighting the best, and we're not able to see, you know, the big superstar mega fights that everybody wants to see. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say, guys. I hope you guys enjoy that, and I will see you guys later. And let me know what you guys say. Do you think Terrence Crawford needs to, you know, actively push for the Spence fight? I think it should happen. But if the fight don't happen, do you think Crawford and Spence just need to vacate and move up to 154, and at least they could fight each other, and then the winner can get Jermell Charlo and Brian Castano? Or should they try to push for this fight at 147, and at least that way they're able to solidify their legacy, and whoever is going to be there at the top, you know, with them, that being the younger, you know, welterweights like Boots and Ortiz, then by all means go for it. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I gotta say. I hope you guys enjoy that. More content coming out soon. I'll see you guys later. Peace out and goodbye. Thank you.